Good day, my name is Devika Suku, and today I'll be talking to you about Sir Thomas Picton and his attachment to the history of Trinidad. Lieutenant General Sir Thomas Picton was born 24th of August 1758. He was a Welsh officer in the British Army and fought in the Napoleonic Wars. Picton was respected for his courage and feared for his irresponsible temper. He was the seventh of 12 children born to his father, Thomas Picton, and was born in Haverford West, Pembrokeshire, Wales. In 1771, he received his assignment for joining the army, but didn't until 2 years later. Thomas Picton was also known as a tyrant of Trinidad, or the blood-stained governor. Historically, he has been hailed a public hero, but his governance of Trinidad and his treatment of slaves marks him out as a particularly cruel leader. When Sir Ralph Abercrombie left Trinidad, he appointed Picton commandant and military governor, with instructions to administer Spanish law as well as he could and to do justice according to his conscience. Picton decided to remedy the civil disorder that prevailed on an island renowned as a haven for runaway slaves and deserting soldiers. In an inferior position by the militarization of his force of only 520 men, he made an early example of mutineers and established a system of police over the entire island by improving the road communications. There were 35 executions during Picton's government. The majority was in his first year. The gallows were conspicuous on Port of Spain's busy waterfront, and the governor was often there to inform his new arrivals of his justice system. He was equally severe with the slaves, who amounted to 10,000 of the island's total population of nearly 18,000 people. Port of Spain's steamy gallows had long served as a correction center that administered flogging, branding, air clipping, and the staking out of degenerates in the infamous Cajo Brulants. It was now full to overflowing as Picton, who published his own slave code, sought to make slave discipline the backbone of his new order. In 1797, he reported that peace and harmony prevailed throughout the colony of Trinidad. Some time later, he took a mistress to live with him at Government House on the strand of Port of Spain. Rosetta Smith was a vivacious Spanish-speaking woman of mixed race, half his own age, with whom he would have 4 children within 5 years. With the island peaceful, Picton wrote to London praising Trinidad as a perfect center for South American continent. Aware of the unhappiness of the Americanos with the dead hand of Spanish mercantile protectionism, he suggested that a small invasion would be sufficient to mobilize an insurrection that would spread throughout the entire continent. He entertained Americanos at Government House and sent small raids across the Gulf. The governors of Caracas and British Guiana put £20,000 on his head, but that did not work. London raised his annual salary to £1,200, though his actual income from investments in the island was several times that particular figure. His deeper plans came to nothing. However, since London was more concerned about Britain's ability to resist the invasion by Napoleon than about launching one of its own, nonetheless, he dispatched on the subject probably helped the Trinidad remain a British possession in the peace of 1801, and he was promoted to Brigadier General on the 22nd of October, 1801. The vigor of Picton's rule had made him enemies, however, especially among the new British immigrants. Picton was informed that the island would henceforth be under the control of 3 commissioners, with Colonel William Fullerton and Commodore Samuel Hood above him. He felt degraded in the eyes of the world. Fullerton, a well-connected Scotsman, arrived on the 4th of January 1803, and within weeks visited the gallows, which he was found so wretched that he approved the building of a new one. He moved in council for certified statements of all the criminal proceedings that had taken place since the island became a British territory. On the 18th of February, the 6th anniversary of the conquest, Picton tendered his resignation, remaining in post only until London notified his acceptance of resignation. 4 days later, Samuel Hood arrived, but within a short time he too had resigned in sympathy of Picton. Spanish and French planters, who never knew such stability on the island, petitioned the king to reject Picton's resignation. On the 14th of June, Brigadier General Frederick Maitland arrived with the news that he was to supersede Picton as military commander. That same evening, Picton said farewell to Rosetta and his children and sailed from Port of Spain, never to return. After serving briefly under Lieutenant General Grenfell in the recapture of St. Lucia and then Tobago from the French, Picton pressed on to London, where he learned that Fullerton had left Trinidad and had preferred criminal charges against him. In December 1803, he was arrested by the order of the Privy Council and bailed by his uncle William for £40,000, an enormous sum that was virtually presumed impossible for his guilt. The main indictment charged him with the unlawful application of torture to extort confession from one Louisa Calderon respecting a robbery in Port of Spain. The woman was 13 years old at the time. This happened in December of 1801. Louisiana Calderon, in fact, had cohabited with the trader Pedro Ruiz, and she had conspired with her paramour Carlos Gonzalez to rob Ruiz. There was little doubt of their guilt, but the woman had refused to give evidence. In accordance with Spanish law, the alcalde, Monsieur Begarat, requested recourse to the picket in order to apply the question, to which the governor acceded as a matter of routine. The picket consisted of hoisting the prisoner on a pulley in such a way that a big toe of 1 foot stood on one sharp pointed picket. In this position, Louisiana Calderon soon confessed. Gonzalez was convinced and punished by banishment, while Louisa was released in consideration of the imprisonment that she had already undergone. Picton's trial came up before Lord Ellenborough in the Court of the King's Bench on 24th of February 1806. The 2 intervening years have seen an exchange of pamphlets on the part of Fullerton, Picton, and their respective supporters. The prosecutor, William Garrow, was renowned for his bruising style of cross-examination. During the trial, he displayed a lurid illusion of the picket both to the jury and Louisa Calderon, whom he asked to demonstrate torture, adding that it should be henceforth known as pictoning rather than picketing. As a final ploy, he produced a copy of the Recopilation de las Leyes, an ancient schedule of Spanish law as it applied to the colonies. He summoned the lawyer Pedro Vargas, who, like Louisa, had been brought over by Fullerton especially for the trial, and had him confirm that Recopilation made no mention of the picket. Picton's defense lawyer, Robert Dallas, was outmaneuvered, especially that since he was denied access to the Recopilation. A technical verdict of guilty was returned and a new trial moved for. Before the second trial of 11th of June 1808, matters changed in Picton's favor. He gained from the support of the Hood, now a national hero, after his daring exploits against the French of Rochefort, where he lost an arm. Hood was a popular choice when he stood at the hustings of the Westminster by-election. His opponents retaliated with a poem published anonymously, The Picton Vale, or The Hood of Westminster. But when Fullerton interceded at the hustings in an attempt to associate Hood with misdeeds in Trinidad, he was shouted down by the mob. Fullerton died an unhappy man in February 1808, leaving his wife the falling of hope remaining his reputation. In the second trial, Dallas was sufficiently well versed in the Recopilation to discredit Vargas' evidence. a special verdict was returned that by the law of Spain torture existed in the island of Trinidad at the time of the cessation of Great Britain, that no malice existed in the mind of the defendant against Louisa Calderon independently on the illegality of the act. This means that Sir Thomas Picton did no harm according to the laws of Spanish. This partially exonerated Picton, though it still found him guilty of an illegal act. Effectively, it is said that he had the right to sanction torture under Spanish law, but not under the island's British governor. When the people of Trinidad subscribed £4,000 towards Picton's legal expenses, he returned the money to relieve those who had recently suffered in the disastrous fire in Port of Spain. The old Duke of Queensberry offered to assist Picton in his legal expenses with a sum of £10,000, but Picton again graciously declined, as his uncle had supplied him with the necessary funds. Picton's reputation was built on his military prowess. He fought under the Duke of Wellington during the Peninsular War. He described him as a rough, foul-mouthed devil as ever lived, but he always behaved extremely well. He rose to military success and was the highest-ranking officer to be killed defending Britain in the Battle of Waterloo, 1815. When Napoleon returned to Elba, Picton, at Wellington's request, accepted a high command in the Anglo-Dutch army and was appointed commander of the 5th Infantry Division. Along with every other senior officer in the army, he was invited to the Duchess of Richmond's ball that was held on the 15th of June. On the 18th of June at Waterloo, when Napoleon sent in the commandant in a corps to attack the Anglo-Allied centre near La Haye Sainte at 13:30, Picton launched a bayonet charge on the advancing French column. While repulsing the attack with imperious valor, his last words were, "Charge! Charge!" He was shot through the temple by a musket ball. On subsequent examination, Picton's body was found to have suffered a serious musket ball wound to the hip on the 16th. Apart from his servant, he had told no one, nor he consulted a surgeon, choosing instead to bandage the wound himself. His body arrived in Kent on June 25th with the salute of guns from the ships. It reached Canterbury the same evening and was deposited in a room of the Fountain Inn where Picton had dined on his way to the continent. On 26th of June, to the strains of the Dead Man's March, the funeral procession, accompanied by the 52nd Regiment of Foot, moved towards London, where it arrived on the 3rd of July. He was then interred at the family vault at St. George's, Hanover Square. A public monument was erected in his memory at the St. Paul's Church on order by the Parliament, and in 1823 another was erected at Carmarthen by subscription. The King contributed £100. On the 8th of June 1859, his body was reinterred at the St. Paul's Cathedral, lying close to the body of the Duke of Wellington. He is memorialized in St. Michael's Church in Rudderbaxton in Pembrokeshire, in which the parish that he grew up. Sir Thomas Picton's contribution to Trinidad is the renaming of Picton Street in Port of Spain. Thank you.